So who do we play as in Help Wanted 2? We'll discuss this in detail in this and a few subsequent videos to give a real idea of what I think and exactly why I think it. Firstly, we must look at the most recent games and consider the starkest shadow cast across them. This means that we have to address William Afton. I'm Cthulhu's, and let's have a closer look. While playing Help Wanted 1, and even Security Breach and Ruin, I was constantly aware of the nods to Afton and his past deeds. It would be completely remiss not to consider him when the very core conflict of the series is his murders at Freddy's Pizzeria. It might enhance your appreciation of this discussion to read over my other work that explores how Afton might be a splintered character, composed of Afton, the man, and his darkness, made of flesh, which either inhabits his physical suit or a digital form. A non-exhaustive summary of this can be found in my article, linked in the comments. Help Wanted 2 only strengthened my feelings on Afton as it gave the player a look at several competing forces within the narrative of the game. Once again, however, the game was full of the mainstays of the series: rabbits, split natures, and darkness. Prankster and the Frights was one of the first stories directly connecting the literature and Help Wanted. This short story leads us to believe that a VR tester named Parker has turned villainous and is leading Jeremiah, his jealous co-worker, on a horrific and rather gory birthday treasure hunt through the empty office building. The setting's obviously reminiscent of the pizza party level in Help Wanted. The importance of birthdays in this story, alongside the twist at the end where we find that whatever the thing that's speaking with Parker's voice has taken a face, to me is once again a hint to us that William's lost control of something he created. The games reiterate again and again that there's something important in birthdays to William, linked to his concept of a happiest day and creating a remnant prisoner. It's also worth noting that at the close of this story, we're led to believe that though we assumed Jeremiah's co-worker Hope was dead, she might have been the one orchestrating the whole event. Jeremiah finds hints that she's dead, only to realise he was being fooled the whole time. This gives us a broad hint about Vanny's nature, where her expectations are subverted at the end of Help Wanted 2. The daycare attendant as a character was introduced in Security Breach, and is a figure who also represents a dual fractured nature. We know he can be Eclipse, a cohesive whole character far more capable than his splintered parts, but that some event has split them up, forcing darkness and light themselves to change their nature. In personality, Moon is dark, threatening and dangerous, while Sun is manic and helpless, with both working one against the other. William himself has shown a similarly fractured nature on several occasions in the novels, both with his mute refusal to speak when captured by the teens without his mask, and later in how he contrasts his Springtrap persona with himself. In his depiction, Springtrap is very manic and perhaps even a little reminiscent of Sun. He even ad-libs a little song, which Sun also does in Ruin. Through the novels, we learn the daycare attendant was once an entertainer and that their act was a Jekyll and Hyde performance, but now it appears far more than just an act. This may be what happened to William, with his secondary life as a murderer becoming more real and impossible to escape, and the shadows holding him captive. We see this same metaphor present in the poster from the alleyway in FNAF 6, which depicts the legend of the terrible man-wolf. This poster returns in the barn birthday party in Help Wanted's Halloween DLC. The legend of the werewolf is well known. It involves someone who appears normal by day, but becomes a wild animal by night. This is a metaphor for the animatronics, and William himself. In the novels, William unquestionably created Twisted Wolf, and this was the first time we encountered a wolf-shaped animatronic in the series. And it's no coincidence in my opinion that he's linked to this animatronic in particular. The figure of the absent wolf animatronic returned in Security Breach and Roxy, whom we first encountered speaking to someone in her head. It was framed as a self-pep talk, but we certainly saw a listen for a response from someone that Gregory could not see. She reiterated this concept of two individuals in one, twins, dual natures. This arises again and again. Even the end of Security Breach faced us with 2 Vanessas, something I never saw anyone in the fandom adequately explain at the time. Roxanne herself is a needy character, but is by no means the only character who needs reassurance to keep her under control. Funtime Freddy is outright hostile towards the player, and it's worth taking a brief step back to consider why this is. We first encounter Funtime Freddy in the breaker room as Michael in Sister Location, where he's aggressive and must be repeatedly sent back to the stage using Bonbon's reassurances. Michael's advised to take this approach by hand unit. Michael explains later that they thought I was you to William regarding how he was treated by the animatronics down there. We experience this same hostility and the same solution from the player, this time without the assistance of hand unit, in Help Wanted 2. Whoever we are could have been the one who programmed hand unit in the first place. Funtime Freddy's hostility here makes me think we're either dealing with Michael, or possibly more likely, given various other factors, William himself. Funtime Freddy in the novels is hostile towards the teenagers only while he's under William's control, injected with Remnant and sent after them. However, he and all the other animatronics go straight after William as soon as they realise he's their enemy. This happens in the movie too. Another instance of a pre-recorded message soothing a character into submission is seen in Ditophobia, where a recorded tape of who we assume to be William sends Rory back to his endless loop of imprisonment. Interestingly, a pre-recorded message calms a character in all these instances. It's only in the Ditophobia example we're truly able to understand what a horrific situation it is to be so enslaved by something as simple as a voice. From this section, we've established some of the themes of dual nature, along with the themes of soothing something dangerous that are present all through the series. Even the puppet is one of the most basic forms of this concept, soothed by William with her music box, but coming after him immediately when she's freed. Both of these elements have been present since FNAF's earliest days, and both are inextricably bound to William. Help Wanted 2 was named Thumper while in development, a name it shares with the rabbit character from Bambi, and even in the finished version, rabbits are at its core. William Afton is symbolised by the rabbit consistently throughout the series, with only 1 or 2 exceptions to this rule. We know he is, and possibly always has been, obsessed with Bonnie. Knowing this, it stands to absolute reason that we should scrutinise any example of rabbits or rabbit symbolism as potential nods to William's influence or presence. Rabbits are an easy shorthand for him. Even new series fans can easily pick up on this. However, it seems that some people have decided rabbits are somehow too obvious and are instead some kind of conspiratorial code hinting at something else entirely. I disagree. To me, the rabbit is how we identify William, and diluting this clear thread of recognition doesn't make too much sense in a series where symbols are how we identify characters. Characters who sometimes don't even have solid names to go by. Help Wanted 2 is steeped in rabbits, with Glitch Trap looming large over the series again. I suspect William and Henry wore cloths fursuits when they worked on the floor at Freddy's whenever the animatronics were out of commission. This fallback measure was established irrefutably in FNAF 3, where the old tapes mentioned temporary costumes.
Until replacements arrive, you will be expected to wear the temporary costumes provided to you. Keep in mind that they were found on very short notice, so questions about appropriateness/relevance should be deflected.
Glitch Trap is very possibly one of these temporary costumes from the early days, and very possibly where William's fixation on the rabbit character began. When he imagines Bonnie, it might be that he imagines the oldest costumes. We see other examples of these costumes down in the basement of the pizza place in ruin. I have an extensive article discussing why we think William Afton is the guard we play as in FNAF 2, that I'll link below rather than recap here. Under this assumption, however, I want to highlight that the song at the end of FNAF 2 where we win the final night and close the location is exactly the same song we see Glitch Trap celebrating to at the end of Help Wanted. We saw William, or some part of William, victorious in Help Wanted, and I think we see him have a change of fortune at the end of Help Wanted 2. If I tried to list every time we see William associated with rabbits in the series, I would be here for the next 8 hours, so I won't. There isn't too much point anyway. If people would rather allocate his specific symbolism to some new random character, nothing I show them will ultimately change their minds. Let's consider some of the important moments in Help Wanted 2 and who they might apply to. Bonnie Bowl was omitted from most of the marketing material for the game, and is perhaps one of the spookiest levels, with a private bowling lane giving an intensely haunted impression to the player. This area is introduced to us specifically as Bonnie's private lane, which we presume would have belonged to Bonnie himself. I would argue Bonnie himself is synonymous with William Afton. Bonnie's jaws consume the bowling pins as they fall, reminding us of the area beneath Bonnie Bowl in ruin, where staff bots were collecting and holding the fallen pins in a way strongly reminiscent of harvested souls. At the same time, we're reminded of what happened to Bonnie himself, with the player throwing the bowling balls and knocking out pins that look like his teeth. It's a very interesting minigame, and one which evokes both the consumption of remnant at the cost of fallen humans, and the ultimate cost it wrought upon the person who was doing it. Bonnie was physically damaged, but it does not seem he was killed, and the same thing happened to William. Bonnie's linked explicitly to the caution or wet floor bots, which we know from the debug menu of the game, and their horrific screams, are souls. In Help Wanted 2's Bonnie minigame, we also see the same Bonnie mascot that we saw in Security Breach, which was directly linked to William through the animations at the alley, depicting him literally killing horrified pins. In Help Wanted 2, these pins are now staff bots, once again also implying that the staff bots were once human. Glitch Trap assists us throughout the game through graffiti on the walls of the pizzeria, giving the player hints on what they must do to escape, with every task earning them a new doll, until we've essentially absorbed all of the children's souls. This ending leads us into Princess Quest 4 and a trade with Old Man Consequences himself. He trades the player the Glitch Trap plushie for the mask, which leads to Vanny coming into possession of Glitch Trap himself and possibly destroying him. If Glitch Trap is a creature of agony working at William's behest and the player is the human part of William, where does this leave him, as we know he, the player, was not destroyed? In this same ending, we glimpse the game's protagonist, an adult glowing blue and of indeterminate age and sex. However, I would like to point out that the colour of the protagonist matters here. William Afton is depicted as purple throughout the series, the colour of the dark remnant we assume he'd been using at that point in time. In Security Breach, we know that what seems to be processed remnant is a bright teal colour. We see it in the charging stations around the Pizzaplex, and in Ruin we see it eaten into the ground. The protagonist has very likely consumed a lot of remnant. I wonder who we could think of in the narrative who's obsessed with hoarding this particular energy. In the relatively more straightforward Help Trap ending, we see a recharge station open and Glitch Trap's hand reach out, only for the player to suddenly be surrounded by Nightmarion staff bots. Remember, these staff bots are ones no longer obedient to the company or the game, who appear to trap the player inside the rabbit-eared map bot and make them watch as the Vanny technician mask is handed over to Cassie with no way to influence the outcome or communicate with her. We know ultimately that this mask leads to Cassie releasing the mimic from its confines. We cannot know at this point in time which Ruin or Help Wanted 2 ending is the one which occurred, as endings in the series have been deceptive before. Help Wanted 2 was marked by its lack of the mimic or Helpy's appearance, Helpy with an eye. This would not have been difficult to implement, but is instead sidestepped. The entity is also not present, which I found very interesting. It pursues Cassie relentlessly throughout Ruin after she obtains the mask. Could this have been William trying to get it back? We're never sure what it wants from her. Ultimately, I don't think the rabbit symbolism in the games and the omission of the mimic is an accident. Instead, it's intended to establish that we are looking at William in this game without muddying the interpretation. The fans have already shown they are more than willing to attribute anything to the Mimic at this point. Involving the model in any way in the game would immediately result in every character being assumed to be the Mimic itself. The Mimic was left out. Rabbits were left in. I don't think this is an accident. I think we're William Afton. And that's that. Thanks for listening. As always, don't take it too seriously. This is my series. Yours might be different. I just like to give people something to think about. And that was the whole goal of this, so I hope it started you thinking. There will be more videos like this. I'm going to try and do short videos. Famous last word, but that's my goal. So I'll see you in the next ones.